Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Martine, and if you are new here, I do videos on Vedic astrology mainly, but also with some tropical insights, and I focus on both relationship and natal astrology. And if you like this video and you would like to hear more content from me, please like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell to see when I will post a new video. And also, if you're interested in a personal consultation, I do consultations on a wide variety of topics. Please check out the video description. I will leave my contact information there. Thank you. So today's video is going to be kind of like, again, kind of a free speech thing. It is a subject that, again, is based on my observations. And, I thought it would be interesting to talk about. And it's namely about the Moon Nakshatra in compatibility, and more specifically, how compatibility changes with time based on how old a person is, okay? And bear with me, okay? So this whole thing kind of dawned on me when an acquaintance was telling me about her experience with this man that she started having a relationship with. So to make a long story short, she was telling me that, she met her boyfriend when she was in her mid-20s. He was in his 40s. And when they first met, he was not in his 40s. He was in his, mid-30s, right? So there was roughly 10, 15 years between them, something like that. When they started out, they were getting along just fine. It was good chemistry. They could talk about everything. It was like almost instant compatibility, etc., etc. They started dating. Eventually they got together. And what happened was, fast forward to roughly 8-9 years, where she was in her early to mid-30s, and they started having arguments, more and more arguments, okay? And to the point where she actually said something along the lines of, I felt like I didn't even know this person anymore. They started arguing about things that she never thought they would argue about. All of a sudden, he seemed to have different opinions about everything. And really, while she was talking, it suddenly dawned on me, a download from, the ether or something, that maybe it was because as they aged, her nakshatra from the Navamsa became activated versus the nakshatra from the natal chart. And basically, when they started out, when they got together, she was younger. So remember when I told you that Navamsa mainly takes over a person's life and personality after the age of 35 or after marriage, okay? So in this case, it wasn't marriage. These people were not, both of them had not been married. They didn't get married, actually. They were just in a relationship. And however, there was this pretty significant age difference. And when I actually checked this, as soon as I got home, I checked their situation, because she had given me hers and his birth details, and it turned out to be true. So in other words, what happened was that when they started dating, her Moon Nakshatra was in a certain nakshatra, when, she was in her 20s. And then when she was approaching her mid-30s, her Navamsa Nakshatra started becoming more active, right? The Moon Nakshatra, mainly. I only looked at the Moon Nakshatra because, remember, the moon placement is the most important placement, especially according to Vedic astrology. Of course, it's also important to look at all the other placements, but for general, just to get a general insight, because the moon shows your personality, it shows the way you think, your thoughts, your thought patterns, what you need in general in life, what keeps you preoccupied, your style of nurturing, what you need in a relationship, especially in a relationship, when you need to feel nurtured, etc. And yeah, to be honest, I don't even remember exactly, because I don't remember exactly what the nakshatra signs were. I think it was that her nakshatra was, let me think. Let me think what nakshatra. I'm pretty sure she was a Kritika or a Rohini. She was either a Kritika or Rohini in the natal chart, and this guy had Jyeshta in the Navamsa. So I think it was Kritika. And when you check the compatibility, because you can check this, like, just Google it. There are compatibility markers, between nakshatras, and basically between Kritika and Jyeshta, the compatibility is pretty strong. It's one of the strongest, actually, for Kritika, I think, or for Jyeshta, or for both. But what happened was that as she got older, her nakshatra in the D9, I think, was, I don't remember, again, I don't really remember, but it was one of these nakshatras that had a really low compatibility with Jyeshta. And this is it. This is the gist of what I wanted to say. And this was just one example. But after I realized this, I started looking at a lot of charts. I started looking at, other people that were telling me about their relationships. I started looking at people that I knew for a long time. Because especially when you want to analyze a nakshatra situation, like especially involving the Navamsa, you have to pretty much understand to a large extent what has happened between these two people. So you have to have a pretty good insight into their history and all that in order to see if there was an influence about this, with respect to this thing that I've talked about. And yes, it checks out every time that every time that I looked at this situation, it always checked out. And this again kind of explains, those situations where people get together when they're like 17, 20 something, and then they reach their 40s and their 50s, and they're like, who is this person and why are they in my house? That kind of thing. Because, and of course, on a non-astrological plane, the way that people explain it is just to say that people change, and it's true, people do change. However, in astrological terms, the way that you see a person's development over time and trajectory, especially after the age of 35, is by looking at the Navamsa. And I'm really curious to see if you check for this, if you see some truth to it, because every time that I check for it, it really always checks out. And of course, it's not always black and white, and of course, you also have to look at the entire horoscope and what else is going on. But it generally checks out, And another thing that I wanted to say is that with nakshatra compatibility, it's not always really very black and white. And yes, there are, online compatibility assessments, I guess, based on nakshatra, or these like scores, like what is the percentage of compatibility between this nakshatra and the other. But it's not always like clean cut, because for instance, you probably remember when I talked about yoni compatibility, for instance, which has to do with sexual compatibility based on nakshatra. There are cases, for instance, where two nakshatras could be compatible from a sexual point of view, but they're not compatible from any other point of view. Or the other way around. They're compatible overall, like platonically, but they're not compatible at all in the bedroom, basically. So again, that's also something to take into account with the animal compatibility. But really, just time and time again, every time I looked at the charts of couples that I studied, it really checks out. Like, in terms of how the dynamic of the relationship changed once they both reached that over 35, age limit, bracket, whatever you want to call it, it always checks out that their compatibility tends to change. And sometimes you can even see this, of course, once again, you can check this for non-romantic relationships, and I've seen it a lot. Like, I've seen it also can explain, for instance, why you can be good friends with someone when you are 20 something, but by the time you're 40 you feel like you have nothing in common. And again, you know, in real life, so to speak, people just say, well, we took different paths, we no longer have anything in common. But oftentimes these paths are also described astrologically by looking at the Navamsa. It just so happens, you know. And and I've seen it a lot, like, for instance, in, you know, family as well. Like, how come with, you know, sometimes relationships with, family get better after a certain age. For example, some cases, I'm not saying that's my case, but in some cases, yeah, it explains this. And yeah, this is just something, again, based on observation that I thought I would throw in there because I find it fascinating. And once again, like, the couples that I know who are really, really long lasting, like, I'm talking people who have been together, you know, 30, 40 years. Again, sometimes this could just be, you know, especially in the older generations, it could be due to education, you know, because the older generations were raised like you have to stay together no matter what happens. But sometimes you see that, you know, with these couples they grow old together and they seem to really get along even late in life. They have compatible Moon Nakshatras not only in their natal charts but also in the Navamsa. So basically showing that they will maintain compatibility after midlife. Now, I know that this is not what some astrologers, I mean, I personally haven't read about this anywhere. It's just something that occurred to me because of this experience that this acquaintance had shared. And, you know, it's not something that I read anywhere, like I said, so I know that some astrologers maybe would say that this is not true, because, I mean, I've heard of astrologers who don't even look at nakshatras in the D9, for instance. But I am the kind of person that I look based on intuition and observation. So I would be really curious, like, if you check this for, let's say, a lot of relationships, maybe you've had a situation where it would be very obvious, like maybe you have fallen out with a relative or a friend or a boyfriend suddenly after a certain age, and especially if it's like around that, I would say 30 plus mark, you know, because the Navamsa gradually takes precedence over the natal chart. So it's not like it's going to be overnight. The night that you turn 35, you magically become your Navamsa. But it happens gradually, and the closer you get to that mark of 35, the more, sometimes according to some astrologers, it's even 27, 28. I mean, I personally feel like I'm pretty much my Navamsa already, and I'm in my early 30s right now. So yeah, it would be interesting if you would have these relationships where maybe you figured out that the older you got, the less you got along with someone. It would be interesting if you checked your compatibility based on the Moon Nakshatra in Navamsa between your individual charts. I mean, your Navamsa and their Navamsa. Okay, so it has to be Navamsa to Navamsa. But sometimes, like I mentioned in this original couple example, so if a person is under 35 and they meet with someone who is over 35, you want to look for the Moon Nakshatra in the D1 chart for the person who is under 35, and for the person who is over 35, you want to look for the Moon Nakshatra in the D9 more. Okay, ideally you want to look at both. You want to look at D1 and D9, and also compare D1 Nakshatra to D9 Nakshatra, and D1 to D1, and D9 to D9. Okay, because it will show you how these people relate in different times of their lives, at least based on my observation. So again, I'm really curious to see if you analyze this, if you draw any of the similar conclusions that I have drawn. Okay, so this is pretty much what I wanted to share. And once again, if you have liked, please like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell, and also, yeah, please continue to watch the ads if you want to support my channel for free. And once again, if you're interested in a personal consultation, I do consultations on a wide variety of topics. Please check out the video description. I will leave my contact information there. Thank you.